Michael, welcome to the Birchal Podcast. Pleasure to have you with us. You are what staff describe as an original gangster, one of the first companies to go through this. And it kind of fits with your Nuciforo Sicilian surname as well, kind of maybe your past has kind of followed you here. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And yes, I actually used to frequent Matt Vitale's parents' restaurant.
Okay.
And they're Sicilian as well, so maybe there's a connection there.
Cool, yeah. So this is behind the scenes at Birchal. This is all just the old clan coming back together. So for those who don't know, you now manage a company, well, not now, sorry, your company is called Thriday, used to be called Thrive, and back in, I think it was 3 years ago, you did a significant raise, one of the quickest in the history of the platform. You raised $3 million. You raised about 1.5 in, I think, maybe 3 hours, something like that. So a really incredible effort. I'm sure many entrepreneurs listening to this will be like, well, how the hell do I do that or replicate? What would you kind of credit your success to?
Well, look, some of it was absolutely right timing.
Right.
But I think we did put a huge amount into the campaign in terms of making sure that everything from the offer document to the video was top notch. And
right.
I know our internal approach or attitude to things is to do the best we can. I remember we were looking at past Birchal campaigns, picking up things we liked and wanting to take it to the next level, so to speak. But yeah, it was beyond our wildest imagination to have that much traction so early. And I think we just timed everything from the content to PR that we generated on the first day. And then because we did so well on the first day, there was PR that came out the second day about us raising 1.5 in 3. You know what I mean? So just
the story writes itself.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was crazy. But I remember talking to my wife just before the campaign went live, and you just never really know if people are going to put their hand in their pocket. And in our case, they did, and they did in droves. So it was super exciting for us. And I remember it was a little bit like a share price. We were looking at our funds going up every few minutes, and we're like, wow, couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. A lot of founders talk about how challenging it can be, like getting on the phones. And what are your memories from 3 years ago? A lot's happened since then, but
I actually love the control that running your own fundraising brought versus typically when you're relying on other people to make a decision like a VC or an angel. I love that it was a definitive time period and we had a set of activity and a plan. And for me, that was great. So even though we had to do the calls, I knew I was going to be doing calls on those days, right? It wasn't something and we had lined everybody up. And I think for us, it was just great to see that level of support. And also because it was relatively early in the crowdfunding journey, so to speak. And what we saw was people were willing to back new and exciting companies that perhaps, you didn't have that opportunity before, right? Like we either had to go to a VC or go to an angel investor, and it was great to use another tool, I guess.
Yeah. Why did you go down the route of crowdfunding when obviously VCs were a more well-trodden path?
We loved the idea of building a community for Thriday because we, if you're not familiar with Thriday, we are a banking, accounting and tax platform. And when I say those three things, there are a significant amount of well-resourced incumbents in the market. Yeah. And the only way we felt we could compete, besides offering a product that we felt was 10x better, was to actually build it from the ground up from a community perspective, because we felt a lot of those incumbents had lost that community aspect. They were not within arm's reach of their customers. And in many cases, they were building product that wasn't even that useful anymore, but it just become the de facto way of doing things. So for us, it was actually strategic in that we did want to, have a community around it. And we felt that with the type of platform that we were building, especially targeting smaller businesses, that people who were running their own business would see the offer document or see the video and get behind it, and that's what we saw.
Tricky space, right? Because I'm thinking 3 years ago, you would have had big incumbents. Even Xero was a big deal back then. MYOB, large incumbent, although Xero had kind of try to take market share from MYOB. MYOB coming back hard right now. How did you navigate that piece? How did you see your offering was quite unique or different in terms of that regard? Or how did you think about not even just the incumbents, like the tech ones too, right? Because when you say incumbents, you mean like more the people-heavy businesses like your accounting firm?
It's everything, yeah. Our competitors are everything from a one-man accountant on the street to a H&R Block through to your Xeros.
Yeah,
and that's the challenge.
And a bank.
And a bank. So when you're building a breadth of product like that, you end up picking up a lot of competitors. But what we saw was, we talk a lot of, there's a book I read years ago about blue ocean, red ocean, and essentially red ocean means that there's a lot of sharks, there's a lot of blood in the water. And at the moment, that's where your Xeros and MYOBs are. And the challenge we saw there was that predominantly the software was built for accountants to service their clients. And it's very rare you meet someone who just uses Xero or MYOB on their own. They're using it because their accountant wants them to use it because it streamlines their experience or process. So we wanted to tackle it a different way. And we saw the blue ocean being, why do you need an accountant or bookkeeper anymore? Why can't we automate that side of things? And that's also the most expensive side, because when you look at the software cost, an average business will spend, say, $100 a month with Xero or MYOB, but the actual cost comes from paying an accountant $60 to $100 an hour for their support. So most businesses are spending $3,000 to $5,000 a year easily on these things because they're paying their accountant to do a lot of work for them. So the opportunity was there to automate out that part of it and essentially create a new, a new paradigm in accounting by integrating banking into it as well. So within Thriday, you can do everything in one and it's automated, versus the incumbents, you can't do everything in one. You have to use multiple systems and you also have to spend a lot more money and time doing it.
Yeah. Preaching to the converted over here. I'm like, wow, this is like, I've been researching for this podcast. I was like, man, this is a useful product, like especially for a number of different smaller end of town organizations. Like, unless you've got a full-time accountant, or even now, I find it cumbersome to navigate an accountant. They're often so widely spread as well. They've got 5 minutes to spend with you, and they're trying to advise you, but it's like, and they're doing fairly, I hate to say it, low-level tasks to some degree. Like, it's not exactly profound stuff,
Exactly. So when we got under the covers of what we're doing, we also realised that accountants themselves are struggling to service those types of clients.
Got you.
And they tend to have like an 80-20 rule where they'll spend 80% of their time on their bigger clients who are more profitable, need more strategy rather than the number crunching that you're talking about, that sort of basic low-level stuff. So in that sense, there's even a desire from accountants to pull out of that scene. And I think for us, that's been really fruitful as well, because we do get a lot of people say, I'm switching because I don't get that much value out of my accountant, I don't get much time anyway. Or often I hear the one that I'm prompting my accountant to do something for me. So the fact that Thriday does it all automatically, it's actually not, it's not necessarily taking away business from people that want that business in that sense. And I think the other good thing is the trend with, I think when we started Thriday using the word, we're going to use AI to automate your accounting and tax, was a foreign concept to most people and businesses. We were very lucky, obviously, with ChatGPT and OpenAI last year, because now people completely get it and they know that, I've used this to create a blog or I've used it to do this. Of course it could do my accounting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you were very much just before the wave, which is a great time to be establishing credentials in this space, right? Correct.
And I was lucky that prior to starting Thriday, I had worked at a large travel business in the US. I was living in the States, and they were using AI to auto-suggest flights and combinations of flights and things. And if people don't know this, if you're ever booking a flight, you're usually getting something very tailored to your search and criteria and needs. They'll even look at things like the device you're on, the type of time of day you're searching, how far away the flight is, how many passengers. All of those things, as you could imagine, could help you determine, okay, maybe this is a family, maybe they're high income based on where they're going and things. So there's all of that information's used to actually suggest and create flight packages, for example. That was the first time I'd been exposed to AI in that way. And that actually partly inspired Thriday, because I saw how you could use it to do flight suggestions. And And I thought you could actually use it to then figure out what accounting or tax rules this particular income or expense has. And that's what we've built. So from the very beginning, we invested heavily in that. We built a team for it. And now it's paying off in spades for us because we can do all the work that an accountant can do at a fraction of the cost. And it's in real time. You don't have to tell someone to go and do it. It's just happening every time a transaction comes through your Thriday transaction account.
Super powerful. Tell us, where was the business when you went through the race? Like, where were you at? You sound like you said you were a year in just before we jumped on. Is that right?
Yeah, we were very early on, I think, compared to most Birchal raises. And I think we had a proof of concept. We had a partnership with a bank and Visa. And we had an excellent team on paper in the sense of like very experienced people in this area. And I think from that end, we also had a little bit of a community because from the very beginning, we had built this sort of audience of people that were helping us design and test the product. But other than that, we actually weren't live in market, so to speak. We didn't have any paying customers yet or anything. So it was relatively early. And I think that shows the breadth of, I guess, anyone can do a Birchal raise if you've got the right setup around it. So off the back of that, we did a raise, team of 5 or 6 at the time.
Okay.
Now we've got 36 or something.
Wow, it's a big
so,
change.
and that was our first money other than owner, me putting my own hand in my pocket with my co-founder.
Yeah.
So that was huge for us because we could actually start bringing on some people, paying some of our early team members who'd been working on this for nothing for the first year.
Got you.
And I think that's that's one thing that's, I think, important for investors to know is that there is a lot of personal sacrifice often in these early days. You're not getting paid, you're not earning money. So the investment that you give really has a tangible impact on things.
Yeah, that's a great point. What were your goals, aspirations at the time of the race? What were you hoping, like, Why'd you laugh?
Oh, I literally thought, it'd be great to raise like $1 million. That'd be amazing. Yeah. So
you killed that one. So.
Yeah. We had very low expectations. We wanted customers, which was great. A lot of our investors became our first customers. So we were hoping like if we could get I think at the time I remember Birchal telling me the typical amount people invest is around the 3,000, I think. So we thought, if we can get $1 million and say 300 investors, that would be great because we could get 300 customers perhaps out of that. And we ended up raising 3, as you mentioned, and I think we only had about 600 investors. So we actually had a higher average investment than most businesses on the platform as well. But yeah, most of those people became our customers, and a lot of them we've turned into sort of people we use to promote the product as well. So if you go to our website, you'll see them talking about it or videos and things. A lot of those people were initially investors that became customers.
How cool.
Yeah.
And in terms of the aspirations, or mainly I'm getting at uses of capital. Like what were you thinking? Okay, well, we'll raise 1. Where were you hoping to get to in terms of the business?
Yeah, we wanted to get the product into market.
Right. So at this point, it's really kind of a bit haphazard, the product you've got, because you had some pretty serious partnerships there in terms of Visa and a bank and. Yeah,
we had it working, but it wasn't live.
Okay.
And the money, one of the things with Thriday, which was quite challenging, I had Thriday's my second business. The first business we completely bootstrapped, and it's really a case of horses for courses. With that type of business, it was very low cost. You could get something in market relatively cheaply. With Thriday, because of the fact we're dealing with banking, accounting and tax, it's a highly regulated environment. You need a lot of legal support and advice. You need to get insurances, a lot of things that are a step above, I would say, a normal startup would need to invest in.
Parkhound.
Correct.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like a parking
app,
like Spacer.
Spacer bought Parkhound.
Spacer bought Parkhound. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of if you use Spacer, it's Parkhound. That's the original tech and product.
Okay, cool. I've rented Spacer on your platform. Thanks.
There we go.
That was great. Monetise the garage. It was awesome.
Exactly. That was great because, it's a marketplace.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to buy spaces or, it was essentially connecting people. So we're actually able to get an MVP and, product up and running within a few months. Thriday, on the other hand, was about 12 months at least of intensive R&D and build. And then, as I mentioned, there's quite a lot of cost involved. So our goal was to get it into market and get enough traction that we could then go and raise, another round, which we did, thankfully. So we executed on that really well. We used the money. We brought in a few team members. We got everything sorted, and roughly probably 4 or 5 months after the raise, we got the product in market.
Cool.
And then 12 months after the Birchal raise, or a little bit more, we raised our what we called a pre-Series A for $6 million.
Right. So that wasn't from the crowd, I'm guessing, that next raise?
No, we actually received some interest from NAB Ventures.
Yep.
And it was a little bit of a tricky time. It was when the sort of Russia-Ukraine conflict kicked off, the market was starting to turn. And we've been really great in terms of the relationship we had with NAB, so we decided to take that investment.
Okay.
Yep.
I used to work for a company called EdStart, which also were invested by NAB Ventures, and I know the founders there, they talk very highly of NAB, and it's interesting seeing that strategy play out from NAB, and they're very separate from the bank, as I understand, in terms of NAB Ventures is, arguably, obviously NAB's a big organisation, but their intent, to invest in smaller startups like this to see what works, and I think it's very cool, but it can bring a lot of credibility to the table. Did you find it kind of transformative from that? Did they do the whole ticket in terms of the $6 million, or was it just part of the
pretty much? But we they put in 4.9, and we had a bit of follow on. Interestingly, one of the things with the Birchal raise, we also did attract some sort of high net worths,
right,
which followed on, which was great.
Okay.
And I think, again, we were a little bit unique in that sense, where we had a mix of just ordinary mums and dad type investors, as well as some high net worths who liked the ambition or the scale of what we were trying to do.
Yeah, cool.
But with NAB's been fantastic, and I think, to your point, they are very separate, so they look at things on their own accord. I have no doubt, because of their engagement and tentacles into the parent NAB company, they do have a good feel for what maybe is important or interesting for NAB itself. But it's very much just looking at ideas and concepts that they think are going to do well. And for us, they also, they really love the idea that we did crowdfunding too, because for them it was also a sign of traction.
Yeah.
So that was great.
In terms of build, so you're in market 18 months now. You've raised an extra $6 million. Where are you spending the $6 million? What are you trying to do at this point then?
We're really lucky in that post that raise, the business has been going really well, and we're growing quite rapidly, and we're actually close to break even now, which is amazing because we're roughly 3 years old. And for us, it's we're essentially I would say roughly the original sixes. If we weren't generating revenue, we probably would have consumed it all by now. But we're very lucky in that the money we're getting into the product, into the business is largely close to break even, which means that we've got a healthy bank balance, we've got opportunities to look overseas, which we're doing now, and we're doing it from a position of relative strength. Early customers that we got through Birchal became our sort of validation point, and through refining the product with them, we've been able to build something that is very unique, very cost-effective, very efficient in what it does. And now we're trying to really just scale the platform, get as many people to join as possible. And we've got some exciting features which I think will better serve more mature businesses, so businesses that are perhaps employing, maybe they've got international operations, so they need to send money overseas. So we're working on some features around that as well.
Cool. Interesting. And you mentioned just before we jumped on, adding things like trust and partnerships capability. What does that open up? Why are you going down that route at this point?
One is sort of opening or servicing the bigger part of the pie. So roughly about 10% of the market are partnerships and trusts.
Okay.
So we are missing 10%. And I think with trusts especially, a lot of businesses that are a little bit more, I would say, maybe savvy in terms of how they're setting up things, they're thinking about tax and all of that from the get-go, they will set up a trust structure. And for us, it seems like a logical fit because, there is this sort of generic layer of features and things that a business needs, and we think Thriday offers that now. So if you are a trust, there's nothing really that you couldn't do in Thriday, but it's just more that we have to create some additional onboarding features, make sure our tax calculations and everything reflect, what's applicable for a trust. So it's just a bit of extra work. And obviously when you're a startup, you try to prioritise where the money is or where the customers are. So we focused on sole traders and companies first.
Oh, yeah, interesting. I can imagine it would be... How do accountants respond? You've obviously got some who are like, please take these customers away from us. More broadly, though, that must be a decent chunk of the book in some cases for some accountants. Like, how do they respond to something like this? Do they just see it like, oh, crikey, like AI? Is it a good example of AI taking my job?
It is. I think we used to be very conscious about not being seen to talk negatively about accountants or be seen to taking away work for them. And on one hand, I don't have any issues with accountants. And I'm sure the good accountants get all the work in the world. Like it's to me, it's not about accountants at all. Mm. And at Thriday, it's actually just about the business owner. How do we make their life easier? And how do we take away the pain and frustration of tax, accounting, compliance, all of that away? Mm. So if you come into the Thriday office, our actual mission statement is eliminate financial admin. And to eliminate financial admin, there's a set of things that we offer and do. And yes, some of that means that you, if you want to use Thriday, you don't need an accountant. But we're not trying to get out accountants or ruin that industry. We're just trying to serve who we see as our client, which is the business owner.
Got you.
Yeah, so we don't... It's just one of those things. It's almost like collateral damage in a way. Mm-hmm. If Thriday is really, really popular, it would mean that small businesses are generally financially healthier. They're more in tune with their finances. They're more compliant with the ATO because things are getting lodged automatically and on time. And if that means that that business owner is happy and loves what we do, I don't really care about anyone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I love that. Eliminate financial admin, is that what you said? Yeah.
Super ambitious.
Yeah. And really tricky to do because I'm in the process of kind of shifting accountants and appointing this, and you have to sign these paper forms and they need a wet ink signature. You're like, God damn, surely we're beyond this now, but we're not, it seems. And it's I can imagine it must be very frustrating when you're like tech, AI, but you've also got to integrate to things like the ATO portal, like banking, not renowned for its innovation. How do you navigate being that intermediary part between a traditional
super hard?
Yeah,
super hard
because your customers want progress, whatever maybe they want. I never want to speak to a human ever again, as an example. When you still have to go into CommBank and they stand in front of you and say, I'm going to do a two-factor authentication, and you have to do it stood in front of them. It just seems absolutely bonkers that we're doing it that way, but that's the way it works.
It is, yeah. So in that sense, we sort of see ourselves as a little bit of a middleware because we are connecting with all these antiquated systems and trying to abstract away from the end business owner the complexity and issues. And hand on heart, a lot of the negative feedback, we don't get much, but if we do, is things we can't control.
I can totally get that.
Yeah. And it's like someone complaining about something going wrong with the ATO or with a partner, and it's always really hard for us because we have to acknowledge it. We're the front line in terms of dealing with that customer. They don't know that the reason something didn't work well or didn't go smoothly was something out of our control. So it does create a lot of complexity, but we're in it for the long haul. And I think in that sense, one of the good things about our financial position is we don't sweat the minor issues, because we know that eventually we will ensure all of these experiences, even if they are integrating with third parties, antiquated third parties, will be resolved and be absolutely smooth. And we're just sort of picking up things as we go. So we've done so many integrations now. We just have a checklist of things. We know what to do. We know what to ask. We know what to look out for.
Right.
So often, even if we're dealing with very reputable brands or brands that have been around for a long time, we're the ones, I think, now that come with the really solid approach to integrating. But it's hard, you know, and a lot of these businesses, there's not much benefit for them to integrate as well. So the motivation isn't there.
Yeah.
They know they sort of have to, or they should, but, you know, they just haven't had to do too much of it, because it's not every day that someone goes to the ATO, can we automate this or do that? It just doesn't happen. Yeah.
The international piece, where is on the shopping list, or where's the kind of preferred location?
Oh, we have a mix of preferred and people pulling us in different directions.
Interesting.
Which is exciting. I think the first thing to say is going internationally is not for, you know, it's quite complex. So even before engaging with different third parties, we're trying to create a strategy around it. Everything from what do the different markets look like in terms of competitive landscape, what does the market look like in terms of funding, all of these different areas, and then what do we look like if we've got multinational operations, what team do we have, where are they located, what's the corporate structure, etc. But what we found was when we went live, we have generated a little bit of sort of awareness and press globally among banks and fintechs, etc. And we did receive some inbound last year from people saying, hey, would you consider launching this in other markets?
Like a government or from a bank?
From banks as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And why do they?
Yeah, what people might not understand is the relationship we have with banks is really interesting, because what happens is when you open an account with Thriday, the funds that you put on that account are stored with that bank. So for them, it's actually a way to get more deposits. So they're actually acquiring deposits, which is what they want. And they're using, obviously, those deposits to lend out and support the other parts of their business. But you get the security and comfort of knowing that your money is with an actual bank. It's not held with some subset of something. Now, those banks have said, well, we think that the small business accounting or banking propositions in our market are fairly weak, and we see an opportunity for you to launch there and then give us deposits as well. We'll happily hold those deposits. So we've had interest, obviously, New Zealand being close, Singapore, South Africa was interesting, and we're having really good conversations there. And also the Middle East, which is really emerging now. When I did my first startup Parkount, I hardly spoke with or knew of any sort of investment or anything happening in terms of Australia, Middle East.
Yep.
But with Thriday, we've always had a lot of interest from the Middle East, and I think that's something we're going to be pursuing as well.
Got you. Is it interest from like a very technologically savvy group, right?
Yep.
Very innovative, understanding the need that incumbents is, you know, what has worked is not necessarily going to work. So is there a strong kind of mentality there, which aligns with what you're trying to do when you say Middle East?
There's two things there that are really interesting. Firstly, they're actually implementing a tax regime in some of those countries for the first time.
Got you.
Which is fascinating, because we're talking about things and they're like, oh, this is the first time these businesses there are going to be taxed. So that's interesting. And then in many regards, they do have more modern systems, so you can more easily integrate directly into their tax authorities and things. So it is a little bit, again, it is by country. I wouldn't lump the region. They're all fairly different. But in the countries that we're looking at there, there's some really exciting opportunities because of those tax regime changes, just generally sort of digitisation of tax and banking and stuff. That's exciting there.
And I guess they're looking at it from a compliance perspective, and like it's better to do it this way. It's automated. They're not having to build out huge ATO equivalents to chase debt, which is no fun for anyone. So.
Correct, because I think they've seen the issues that countries like ours have had. They're also whilst they're implementing tax regimes, they're really simplifying it. So here, and you can imagine, I used to live in the US. It's state by state, everything's different. There's different tax rates everywhere. It's a nightmare. You would never do that if you were starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So these countries, when they're doing it for the first time, they're really keeping it simple. Like usually there's just a broad-based tax like a GST of 8% or something, and there's none of this more specificity that goes on here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's easier in a way actually to launch something there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's really, really
So
cool.
I'd say Australia from a tax perspective is one of the more complex and has a lot of red tape.
Yep.
And even digitally, it's not very streamlined to integrate with the tax authority. But in other markets, it could be a lot easier for us.
I'm thinking Singapore would be a kind of...
Singapore's great for that as well.
Very kind of forward-thinking as a cohort, aren't they? So, okay, talk to me about the investor base. 600 investors from Birchal. What's that experience been like for you in terms of navigating, having 600 people expecting a return, or now, where's my money, or what's that played out?
Firstly, it's really interesting from a human sort of psychology perspective. I think it's been a huge motivator for us to know there's real people. They're not necessarily like wealthy and they don't care if we don't make any money. So I think from that perspective, it's been very motivating. And then on the other end, surprisingly, now we send all our investors are on a regular update. So I guess it differs by business, but we've had surprisingly very little sort of where's this at, or what's happening, or where's the money, or whatever. So I think that can be a little bit of a fear. So in terms of myth busting, we haven't experienced that at all.
Cool.
And what we have seen though is we've absolutely seen a ton of them become customers, which is like more than you could ask for. Yeah.
And so I understand, did you bring them with you, or did you give them a chance to invest into the company they were already engaging with, or was it that you found them in the Birchal kind of community, as it were?
Through the Birchal community.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and not just becoming customers. Some of them became employees.
Right. Okay.
Some of them have become partners.
Right.
And some of them became partners we assessed, but we didn't do something with. So just in terms of opportunity, we had a lot of things come to the table, so to speak.
Interesting.
Off the back of that. And I'd say the awareness you get out of Birchal is, infinitely higher than you could get in any other sort of way or form of raising money. I think, like I said, we've had a couple of people join the business afterwards, apply for roles, et cetera, et cetera. So even to this day, I get interesting things that come up where someone will say, I first heard about you through Birchal, and you can't really pay for that. It's just something that's in people remember,
Yeah, it's cool. I'm trying to think about where to go next, really. I think it's just a fascinating story. I'm just interested to know from Parkhound days, what were some of the mistakes that you thought you weren't going to do again from Parkhound? Like when you obviously had a successful exit, what was that journey like for you in terms of looking back on it?
Yeah, good question. I actually have spoken to a few people who've sold their first business about this. One thing I did, which I encourage everyone to do, is literally the day after I sold the business, I sat down and wrote learnings, changes, things I would do differently.
Yep.
I literally just wrote it all down because I don't think... everyone, I think, looks back fondly with rose-tinted glasses, and I think it's really important to just write down everything that you would do. And I didn't really look at it for a while. And then I knew I would do another startup. I just didn't know when or what the right idea was. And my wife and I had kids and we moved to the US, so life got a bit hectic and I wasn't quite ready to do another business. But when I started getting the bug again, I pulled that out. And it had a huge impact on what I did with Thriday. Everything from the team to the structures we put in place, even just the amount of analysis we did. So I would like to think, there's your startup founder that stereotypically is a genius, doesn't really have a plan or a process, but they make their business a success. That's not me. I am the opposite. I'm very meticulous. I like to plan. I like to do all of those things. So what I actually thought with Parkhound, I did a huge amount of research, business cases, financial models, speaking to people. But upon reflection, there was actually some blind spots with that business I didn't identify at the start. Right. And I really wanted to avoid that with Thriday. So I spent even more time researching it and figuring it out. And what I also did was with Parkhound, unlike most founders, I think some founders will say, I was having a drink with a mate at the bar, we're talking about this, and then we had this idea for a business. Again, I'm the opposite. I'm more like, I feel like I'm excited about running a business, so I'm going to try and find something. So both of them I found through research discussion. But one thing I didn't do that well with Parkhound, which I did with Thriday, is I was more looking at Parkhound on its own as an idea. With Thriday, I was actually assessing 3 or 4 different ideas at the same time, and the ability to compare things. So to give you an example, I would go and speak to a business owner about Thriday, and then the next day I would speak to some other potential customer about this other idea I had. And you can compare. You go, every time I talk to a business about this problem, I'm hearing really good things and it sounds like there is a need, etc. But this other idea, it seems a bit lukewarm.
Yeah.
So that was something I definitely did different as well. And again, it helped reduce some of the blind spots. I could see the opportunity, the risks, etc. And, with Thriday, I really had a clear plan and I'm thankful we've been able to execute on it, even from the sort of team that we're able to build. And, for example, with the CTO, I knew that with Thriday, we needed a really strong CTO because just the breadth and depth of technology, who we were integrating with. I couldn't go to a bank and say, we're going to partner with you with just some developer off the street type thing. So I spent a huge amount of time, I'm talking, just to be specific, 6 to 9 months, finding a CTO, trying a few of them, not working out, trying another one. And then Warren, who's our CTO, still with us today, and is incredible. But I put that effort in, which I probably wouldn't have done the first time around.
And is it because you could afford to be patient? As in, like,
I think you learned that it's better. One thing I learned is there's no point in rushing a startup, because if you pursue the wrong thing, it's going to be a hell of a lot of effort and time wasted anyway.
Got you.
So you'd rather get it wrong knowing that you tried to de-risk it, rather than just picking some idea, pursuing it, and then spending 3 years going nowhere, because you'll absolutely regret it if you go, well, I didn't really put much effort into the initial analysis and it failed. Versus now with Thriday, I wouldn't actually really care if it failed, because I feel like I've given it the best shot I could.
Right.
And mentally, I think half of running a startup is your mental approach to it, because if you can genuinely get to a place, which is where I'm at, where I really just enjoy learning, doing things well, growing, but I couldn't care less if it failed anymore.
It's cool.
Because I've tried to do everything as best as I could. I've left no stone unturned. If it fails, it fails, because that's life. There's no guarantees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I love the methodicalness of that kind of approach. And what were some of the testing or the assumptions you were trying to get to the bottom of it? And like, at what point were you like, yeah, I've done enough here?
44 interviews.
Okay.
And I started hearing the same things over and over again. Then you get to a point where, well, if I speak to more, it's not really going to get any new nuggets. But the things I was trying to find was a combination of qualitative and quantitative. So on the quantitative side was, how much time are you spending on this? How much does it cost you? How do you feel? Like, what's your satisfaction with this process that you have today? And those things we saw 6 hours a week, $3,000 to $5,000 a year, right. Low satisfaction.
Yeah.
So you start to see that trend line. And then on the qualitative side, you hear people go, it's the worst thing of my week. I do it after hours. It's annoying. I feel stressed because I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
A lot of people who start businesses are not numbers people, so they see numbers and it actually They just gloss over it. So that was really helpful. And then you did start to hear things like, I use XYZ today and it's crap, or it's too complicated for my needs, and I still have to do a lot of things with my accountant. So, yeah, you just hear enough of that. And for me, I remember we did 44, my co-founder and I, very intense, took us 4 or 5 months. You know, these, even just preparing for the interviews and then writing the notes and all of that, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, right. But you're taking it really seriously in terms of...
I'd rather do the 44 interviews again than do 3 years of something
3 years,
and give up a job or give up a steady paycheck and all of that stuff. Yeah,
no, that's really, really cool. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time out to chat to us. Well, one thing we're trying to do better here at Birchal is capture the stories about what happens after the raise. I think there's a lot of excitement and buzz around the raise, but really, you know, the returns are delivered post the raise. And, you know, not every business, no business goes in a straight line. No business goes on to achieve exactly what they wanted to achieve. Just quick question, what are you most excited about from here?
I think there is a genuine opportunity for some business to automate accounting and tax. I believe wholeheartedly that's the future of this industry or paradigm or platform. And I think we have the best shot of doing that. So I can see where we're going, what we need to do to get there, and that the market is coming along with us on that journey.
Cool.
So that excites me, and I think generally it's great to be working with the hustlers, the makers, the people who are there every day trying to create services and products for their customers. So helping make their life a little bit easier brings a lot of satisfaction.
Awesome. Michael, thanks for taking the time out to speak to us.
Thanks, Mike.